The boarding announcements crackled overhead, slicing through the heavy silence that clung to Gate 14. Passengers began to shuffle forward again, but their eyes lingered on Samantha like spotlights trailing a fallen star. Samantha forced herself to stand tall, though every muscle in her body screamed to disappear into the crowd. Her clipboard still lay abandoned on the floor, a small, pathetic symbol of how completely she had lost control. Emily Dawson hesitated near the jetway, her expression torn between sympathy and something harder: expectation. She had seen it all. Everyone had. Evelyn Carter stepped closer, her voice low but unmistakable. "Your real work starts now," she said, her words threading directly into Samantha's core. "Not to impress us, not to save your reputation, but to become the person you thought you already were." Jonas offered a final nod, something weighted with both warning and hope. Then, with the quiet dignity that had defined them from the start, the Carters turned and disappeared down the boarding ramp. No fanfare, no entourage, no vindictive glances over their shoulders. They didn't need to look back. The weight of their judgment and their unexpected mercy would follow Samantha everywhere she went. Slowly, Samantha stooped to pick up the clipboard, her hands trembling. When she stood again, the world hadn't magically forgiven her. The businessman still regarded her with a skeptical arch of his brow. The teenager still whispered into his phone, narrating the fallout for hundreds, maybe thousands online. But something inside Samantha had shifted. She turned to Emily, swallowing hard. "I should have listened," she said quietly. "Next time, I will." Emily offered a hesitant smile, small but real. "Next time, you speak up too," she said. And with that, Samantha moved to the boarding line, her movements slower, more deliberate. She checked each passenger's ticket with care, not scanning for jewelry or designer labels, but for names. Names she promised herself she would see, truly see this time. As she waved the next family through, her chest tightened with the understanding that redemption wasn't a destination waiting at the end of a flight. It was a brutal, grueling journey. One decision, one interaction, one apology, at a time. Somewhere beyond the glass wall of the terminal, the morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a pale, stubborn light across the tarmac. And for the first time in years, Samantha Reed stepped into that light without hiding behind her uniform. Sometimes the harshest lessons come, wrapped not in anger, but in unexpected mercy. Samantha Reed thought she understood people. She thought she could read them with a glance, sort them neatly into categories: first class, economy, worthy, forgettable. It was a defense mechanism forged in her own struggles. A girl from the wrong side of town, clawing her way into spaces no one had ever saved for her. But survival isn't the same thing as understanding, and judgment, even born from pain, can quietly evolve into something cruel. On that ordinary morning at Orchid Bay International, Samantha faced the mirror she had spent years avoiding. The Carters weren't just wealthy passengers, they weren't just powerful names. They were living proof that dignity, grace, and success don't come in prepackaged images. And Samantha realized something that cut deeper than humiliation. She had become exactly what she had once hated: a gatekeeper who mistook appearances for worth. This story reminds us that assumptions are lazy replacements for truth. It's easier to judge at a glance than to lean in and listen. It's easier to dismiss than to ask. But every time we do, we lose something vital, not just about others, but about ourselves. Respect isn't a reward for wearing the right clothes or flashing the right credit card. It's the starting point. Human dignity isn't earned through optics. It's owed to every soul who crosses our path. And real strength, the kind that builds better communities, better companies, better lives, isn't in enforcing walls. It's in having the courage to tear them down, even when the bricks were laid by our own hands. Samantha's journey didn't end with a public shaming or a dramatic firing. Her true punishment and her true opportunity was harder: facing herself. Every day she chose to stay, to learn, to change. She was confronting the small, invisible biases that had once felt so natural they were almost invisible. And every day she resisted the easy comfort of judgment. She stepped a little closer to becoming the woman she thought she already was. In a world that moves faster every second, it's tempting to make snap judgments, to categorize, to filter. But the world needs fewer gatekeepers and more bridges. It needs more people willing to see beyond suits and jewelry, beyond skin color and wrinkles, beyond first impressions and old fears. Because the truth is simple, the person you dismiss today might be the one writing your future tomorrow. The quiet woman in worn shoes might own the building you're standing in. The man without a designer label might carry more wisdom and power than you could measure in dollars or degrees. And when we fail to see people, truly see them, we don't just risk humiliation. We risk losing the very humanity that binds us together. This story isn't just about Samantha Reed. It's about every one of us. Every time we choose curiosity over assumption, humility over pride, respect over judgment, we don't just make someone else's journey lighter. We make our own path richer, fuller, and more worthy of the future we claim to want. Because dignity isn't something you give based on status. It's something you give because it defines who you are. And sometimes, the greatest redemption doesn't come from being saved by others. It comes from daring to save yourself. One choice at a time, one moment at a time, one act of seeing, truly seeing at a time. As the final passengers drifted down the jetway and the airport's noise swallowed the morning once more, Samantha Reed stood alone behind the podium. The world around her had moved on, but inside something fundamental had shifted. She straightened her uniform, not to reclaim control, but to carry herself differently, with awareness, not assumption. Every future interaction would carry the weight of this moment, a silent reminder that true leadership begins with humility, not pride. Some mistakes leave bruises, others leave blueprints. Today had carved a blueprint into Samantha's bones, a map leading her not to comfort, but to growth. Somewhere, far beyond the glass walls of the terminal, Jonas and Evelyn Carter disappeared into the light, leaving no demands, no threats, only the kind of silent expectation that transforms lives, not through force, but through the undeniable gravity of truth. And as Samantha looked out over the gate, she realized redemption wouldn't be won with grand gestures. It would be built in the quiet moments, one boarding pass at a time, one name at a time, one choice, one heartbeat at a time. And for the first time in a long time, Samantha believed she might just be ready, really ready, to begin. Years of boardroom battles had taught him to trust instinct, and right now, every fiber of his being screamed, danger. He watched Kendra ring up orders with mechanical precision, her hands trembling slightly each time the register drawer popped open. Across the kitchen window, the heavy-set manager, a man Malik didn't recognize, wasn't lifting a finger to help. He just stood there, arms folded like a warden over inmates, eyes drilling into every move his staff made. Something else gnawed at Malik. The staff didn't talk, no jokes, no light banter. The small human details that gave a restaurant its heartbeat were missing. Here, only tension lived. Caleb was busy fiddling with the laminated kids' menu, oblivious. Malik kept his tone light as he ordered 2 cheeseburgers, fries, and a vanilla shake, but every muscle stayed coiled, ready. As he paid, he caught Kendra flinch, a micro-expression gone in a blink, as the manager's voice barked from behind the fry station. "Pick up the pace or I'll find someone who can." The words weren't shouted, they were delivered low and sharp. A blade slipped between ribs. The customer in front of Malik didn't even look up. No one did, which meant this wasn't new. He took the receipt without a word and led Caleb to a booth near the back, strategically positioned with a clear view of the kitchen and employee corridor. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Kendra retreat to the side, wiping her hands on her apron, her chest hitching like she was swallowing back tears. Malik's jaw tightened. No CEO wanted to believe this could happen under his roof. But Malik Harrison wasn't the type to look away. Not anymore. Malik sat with his back casually pressed against the booth, a paper tray of fries untouched in front of him. To anyone watching, he looked like just another tired father on a Saturday afternoon. But beneath the table, his hands were tight fists. His eyes tracked the manager, Dean Porter, the name stitched above his grease-streaked shirt, as he prowled between stations like a shark sensing blood. Then it happened. Dean drifted behind the front counter, glancing left and right. Seeing no customers nearby, he popped open the cash register with a swift, practiced motion. Instead of counting, he plucked a thick wad of bills from beneath the coin tray, tucking it smoothly into his jacket pocket. Quick, casual, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Malik's pulse kicked up, but he kept his face impassive, tearing a napkin absently while the scene burned into his memory. This wasn't just intimidation. It was theft, bold and barefaced. Dean barked another order at the kitchen, then disappeared into the back office without a second glance. The energy in the room sagged slightly, like the air itself had been holding its breath. Malik leaned forward, dropping his voice low enough that only Caleb could hear. "Finish your fries, buddy. I'll be right back." He rose, moving slowly toward the bathrooms, just past the break room door. That's when he caught it. A burst of sharp words, muffled but unmistakable. "You're lucky to even have a job here. You screw up again, you're gone." It was Dean, no question. And it wasn't just Kendra being targeted. The fear ran deeper, systemic, poisoning every corner of this place. Malik's expression hardened. He wasn't just witnessing misconduct, he was standing in the middle of a crime scene, with his company's name stamped all over it. Malik leaned against the cold tile wall outside the break room, his mind racing. Charging in now would tip his hand, and Dean would bury whatever evidence existed faster than a stolen dollar in a till. He needed witnesses, proof. A crack big enough to tear the whole rotten structure down. Sliding back into the dining area, Malik forced his breathing steady. Caleb was polishing off the last of his fries, kicking his sneakers against the booth. Malik's eyes drifted to the kitchen. There, near the grill, was a man moving with quiet efficiency, not rushed, not panicked, just steady. The name tag read Troy. Unlike the others, Troy didn't flinch every time Dean's voice barked across the line. He worked with a quiet stubbornness, like a man who had seen it all, and chose to endure. Malik approached under the pretense of grabbing extra napkins. As Troy wiped down the stainless steel counter, Malik murmured low enough that only he could hear. "Busy day?" Troy's hands didn't pause. "Always is," he said without looking up. Malik waited, then added, "Busy, or just heavy?" That made Troy glance over, just a flicker. Enough. Troy exhaled, voice low. "It's heavy when you're working under a weight you can't shake off." A silent understanding passed between them. Malik nodded slightly, slipping a business card, plain, no title, onto the counter. "If you ever want to talk," he said, "there's someone who'll listen." Troy covered the card with a folded rag, eyes never leaving the grill. Malik returned to Caleb, but he knew the first stone had shifted. This wasn't just one bad manager bullying kids. This was a system designed to grind people down, and someone had built it carefully. Malik wasn't here for confrontation, he was here to burn it all to the ground. Malik didn't have to wait long. Barely 15 minutes later, Dean Porter swaggered back onto the floor, barking at a line cook and slamming the register shut after a sloppy transaction. Kendra, still at the counter, fumbled a receipt, her hands visibly shaking. The moment the line thinned, Malik rose from his booth, every step deliberate, controlled. He moved straight to the counter, Caleb trailing behind him, small and wide-eyed. Dean spotted him, forced a greasy smile. "Everything good with your meal, sir?" Malik set his drink down slowly, the ice rattling like a warning bell. "Not quite," he said, voice calm but carrying. "I couldn't help noticing some irregularities." Dean's smile stiffened. Customers nearby perked up, sensing the shift. "Sir, if you have a complaint, you can take it to corporate," Dean said, his tone dripping condescension. Malik didn't blink. "I am corporate." For a beat, the entire restaurant froze. Dean's smirk faltered. "Wait, what?" Malik pulled a thin leather wallet from his pocket and flipped it open just enough to flash his executive credentials. The unmistakable TrueBite Burgers insignia embossed in gold. Gasps rippled through the few customers seated nearby. Troy leaned against the fryer, arms folded, watching. Kendra's mouth fell open slightly. Malik's voice dropped an octave, slicing through the tension. "I've witnessed theft from the register, wage manipulation, harassment of staff. I have it documented." Dean's face drained of color. He opened his mouth to protest, but Malik cut him off with a raised hand. "Save it," Malik said. "You're finished here." Behind the counter, Kendra's lip trembled, but for the first time that day, she smiled. Not from fear, from hope. And that was only the beginning. By nightfall, Malik thought the worst was behind him. Dean had been escorted off the premises, corporate security notified, and the staff, finally, breathed free for the first time in months. But Malik knew better. Corruption this deep never worked alone. The first shot came before sunrise. His phone buzzed violently on the nightstand, headline after headline flashing across the screen. CEO bully forces beloved manager out over petty dispute. TrueBite in turmoil, whistleblowers punished? Malik sat up in bed, heart pounding. They had flipped the story. Instead of exposing Dean as a thief and a tyrant, the media painted him as a scapegoat, and Malik as the villain. The damage was immediate. Social media exploded with hashtags boycotting TrueBite. Customers demanded refunds, investors started making nervous calls, and Malik didn't need a blueprint to know who was behind it. Andrew Clayton, regional director, the man who had promoted Dean, protected him, and now orchestrated the smear campaign to bury Malik before he could dig deeper. Malik dressed in silence, the city still cloaked in pre-dawn darkness. This wasn't just about one crooked manager anymore. This was about a system protecting itself, fighting tooth and nail to survive. He needed allies, proof, and a plan bigger than anything they'd expect. As Malik stepped into the empty street, the first rays of sun cut across the Dallas skyline, sharp and cold. Good, he wanted them to see him coming, because he wasn't here to clean up a mess. He was here to burn down the entire rotten machine and build something stronger from the ashes. And this time, no smear campaign, no puppet master, no shadow games would stop him. Not if he had anything to say about it. By noon, Malik had turned a quiet corner cafe into a war room. The air inside buzzed with low voices and the clatter of coffee cups. Across from him sat Kendra, her hands gripping a steaming mug like a lifeline. Next to her, Troy leaned back, arms crossed tight over his chest, wary but solid. Malik slid a manila folder onto the table, thick with documents, photos, and screenshots. "This isn't just about Dean," Malik said, voice low and steady. "This is about Andrew Clayton, about a network protecting theft, intimidation, and wage abuse across multiple locations." Kendra swallowed hard. "I always thought, if we spoke up, they'd just fire us." "They wanted you scared," Malik said. "That's how they win." Troy leaned forward, his voice rough. "So what's the play?" Malik's eyes burned with focus. "We take the truth public, on our terms, our story, our proof." He outlined the plan. They would gather testimony, not just from the current staff, but from anyone who had been pushed out, cheated, or silenced under Dean and Andrew's reign. Kendra already had contacts, former cashiers, shift leads, even an old assistant manager who had mysteriously resigned last year. Troy, with his quiet reputation, would reach out to kitchen staff across other stores. And Malik, he was already working with a veteran investigative journalist, a man who had torched corporations bigger than TrueBite before. No spin, no PR machine, just raw, documented truth, delivered straight to the public. Kendra's hands finally loosened around her coffee mug. Troy gave a rare, grim smile. For the first time, they weren't victims. They were witnesses. They were a team. And they were about to hit back harder than Andrew Clayton could possibly imagine. The exposé dropped like a thunderclap. By sunrise the next day, news outlets were ablaze with headlines, "Inside TrueBite's secret empire of wage theft and corruption." Employees break their silence, and the receipts are devastating. Screenshots of falsified payroll reports, photos of Dean pocketing cash, first-hand testimonies from former staff, voices trembling, faces blurred for protection, telling stories of threats, missing wages, and lives torn apart. The public backlash hit TrueBite's headquarters like a hurricane. Customers demanded accountability, shareholders threatened lawsuits, franchise owners called emergency meetings. Malik stood at the center of it all, calm, unshaken. He knew where the real strike had to land. At a hastily called board meeting in downtown Dallas, Malik presented the full scope of the evidence: Dean's theft, Andrew Clayton's protection racket, and a secret financial trail leading straight to two more corporate executives who had approved adjustments without audit. The room buzzed with stunned outrage. For the first time, the old guard had no safe ground to stand on. Andrew Clayton stormed into the meeting halfway through, face red, shouting about sabotage and character assassination. Malik didn't even flinch. He simply laid one final document on the conference table, a signed affidavit from the company's former regional auditor confirming Andrew's cover-ups in exchange for kickbacks. Silence fell. The board voted unanimously. Immediate termination for Andrew and his co-conspirators. Full external audit across all regions. Public apology and restitution to affected employees. Malik left the building that afternoon not as a CEO clinging to damage control, but as the man who had pulled a rotten empire up by its roots. The fight wasn't just about saving TrueBite Burgers. It was about rebuilding it, stronger, cleaner, and with a soul that no one could steal again. 3 months later, TrueBite Burgers didn't just survive, it transformed. The changes weren't flashy or headline-grabbing. They were real, steady, built from the ground up. Inside every store, new posters hung by the employee entrance. Your voice matters here. Anonymous feedback systems were installed. Managers were retrained or replaced based on ethical leadership, not just quarterly numbers. Malik personally visited every major region, walking into kitchens and break rooms, not with a camera crew, but with a notebook and a simple question. What do you need to do your job better? And this time, employees answered without fear. Kendra, once a trembling cashier, now stood proudly as assistant manager at the Dallas location, mentoring new hires, running shifts with confidence. Troy took on a regional operations role, quietly ensuring no toxic manager could ever take root again. Customers noticed too. Service improved. Employee turnover dropped by nearly 50% in just 2 months. Even quarterly revenue, once in freefall, began to climb again, a tangible reflection of a company rediscovering its heart. One crisp fall afternoon, Malik and Caleb returned to the same TrueBite where it had all begun. The atmosphere was unrecognizable, in the best way. Employees laughed behind the counter, music played softly, customers chatted warmly over burgers and shakes. Kendra spotted them and grinned wide, handing Caleb a chocolate milkshake with extra whipped cream. On the house, Malik took a slow breath, feeling something rare and powerful settle in his chest. Not pride, gratitude, not for saving a company, but for proving that doing the right thing, no matter the cost, still mattered. As they sat down to eat, Malik smiled at his son. "Always remember, Caleb," he said quietly. "Building something great isn't about making money. It's about making it matter." In business and in life, it's easy to believe that power protects itself, that those who climb high enough can look the other way, ignore the cracks in the foundation, and still stand tall. But Malik Harrison learned something far more powerful. Real leadership isn't built on profit margins or market dominance. It's built on trust, the fragile, irreplaceable bond between people who choose to believe in you. When Malik walked into TrueBite that hot afternoon in Dallas, he thought he was inspecting a business. He didn't realize he was about to inspect himself. Would he be the kind of leader who stayed silent when he saw pain? Or the kind who stood up, even when the cost was high? In the end, Malik chose the harder road. He faced betrayal not with vengeance, but with integrity. He answered corruption not with cover-ups, but with truth. And he rebuilt not just a company, but a family of workers who finally knew someone had their backs. The lesson was clear. Power means nothing if it's used only to protect yourself. True power lies in protecting those who have none. Today, TrueBite Burgers thrives not because of slick ads or clever marketing. It thrives because one man chose to listen when a cashier cried quietly behind a counter. Because he chose to act when everyone else had learned to look away. And that choice, to hear, to care, to fight for what's right, is a choice we all face every day. The next time you see something wrong, something unjust, ask yourself, will you stay silent? Or will you be the one who stands up? Because sometimes all it takes to change everything is deciding that enough is enough. If you found yourself holding your breath during this journey, if you felt the tension, the injustice, the fight to reclaim something pure, then you already understand the deeper truth behind Malik Harrison's story. This wasn't just about burgers. It wasn't just about a company. It was about the courage to face corruption when it's easier to look away. About protecting the people who can't always protect themselves. About rebuilding something real in a world that sometimes forgets what integrity looks like. Malik didn't just save a brand, he reignited a mission. A reminder that leadership isn't measured in dollars, but in dignity. And that when good people stand together, no lie, no empire of fear can hold forever. So next time you hear that quiet voice, the one warning you that something isn't right, listen, and maybe, just maybe, be the one who steps forward first. Because true change doesn't start with titles or money or power. It starts with a decision. A decision to care, a decision to act, a decision to build a better world. One truth, one voice, one act of courage at a time.